I never thought I'd hear my father cried. Not when his mother died. Not when his business almost collapsed. Not when life punched him square in the chest. Last week he called me. And he was sobbing. That was the moment everything flipped. Because 2 years earlier, I was the one crying, sitting on a cold hospital bench with a phone pressed to my ear, begging him to listen. Back then, he didn't cry. He didn't even pause, and the difference between those 2 phone calls. Everything. Before I tell you what I said to him. Just 4 words. I need to take you back to where this really started, because nothing about that moment makes sense unless you understand how alone I was, and how deliberately they left me that way. 2 years ago, my life looked solid from the outside. I was 28, living in Boston, working as a senior graphic designer at a mid-sized agency that loved exposed brick walls and overpriced espresso machines. I'd worked my way up from intern to senior in 5 years. No favors, no shortcuts, no safety net. My apartment in Somerville wasn't fancy, but it was mine. 1 bedroom, squeaky floors, and a stubborn monster, a plant I'd somehow kept alive for 3 years. I had routines. Gym 3 times a week, Thursday dinners with my friend Harper. Morning coffee at 60:30 like clockwork. I thought I was in control. Then one Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. I was deep in a campaign deadline. Fintech client, aggressive timeline, Slack notifications exploding like fireworks. But something told me to pick up. Miss Atwood, this is Dr. Patterson's office. We have your biopsy results. I remember stupid details from that moment. How my coffee had gone lukewarm. How the sunlight hit the glass wall of the conference room. How her voice sounded too careful. She didn't say the results were bad. She didn't say they were good. She said, "The doctor would like to see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Nobody calls you in for good news." That night, food tasted like cardboard. I smiled at texts I didn't read. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every medical article I'd ever skimmed, and told myself didn't apply to me. The next morning, Dr. Patterson didn't waste time. "Stage 3 breast cancer," she said gently. "Aggressive. We need to start treatment immediately." I felt like I left my body, like I was watching someone else nod politely while her entire future cracked open. I was still wearing my work blazer. Still thinking about deadlines. Still pretending this couldn't be real. She asked if I had someone who could drive me home, and without thinking, without hesitating, I said the words that would haunt me later. "I'll call my dad." Here's what you need to understand about my father. Richard Atwood didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He ruled quietly. The kind of man whose opinions became law simply because everyone learned it was easier to obey. Growing up, you didn't argue with him. You adjusted. And even though I'd spent most of my life feeling like second place, when everything fell apart, I still reached for him. Because that's what daughters do when the world collapses, right? I walked out of the oncology office, sat on a bench in the hallway, and dialed his number. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries. He answered on the second ring. "Camille, what is it?" "I'm in the middle of something." I swallowed. "Dad, I just left the doctor." Silence. "I have cancer?" More silence. "Stage 3? I whispered. "I have to start chemo right away." "I'm scared." That's when he finally spoke. And instead of saying, "Come home," instead of saying, "We'll handle this together," instead of saying, "You're not alone," he said something else. Something that split my life clean in 2. And I didn't realize it yet. But those words would come all right. Here we go. Buckle up. This is where the truth starts getting uncomfortable. Before I tell you exactly what my father said on that phone call, you need to understand the family I came from. Because his reaction didn't come out of nowhere. It was years in the making. In the Atwood family, there was a hierarchy, and I was never confused about where I stood. My younger brother, Derek, was the golden child. 2 years younger, but treated like the crown prince from the moment he was born. He was the son, the legacy, the investment. When Derek wanted to go to Boston College, my dad wrote a check without blinking. No scholarships, no loans, just done. When I talked about college, my parents suddenly believed in financial responsibility. Girls don't need expensive degrees. My father said casually, like it was a fact written somewhere official. So I went to a state school, and I graduated with 87,000 in student loans. When Derek landed his first job, my parents threw a dinner party. When I got promoted to senior designer, my mom sent a thumbs up emoji. That was the pattern. Derek shined. I blended into the background. A few months before my diagnosis, Derek got engaged to Megan. Nice enough, polished. The kind of woman who never says the wrong thing and always looks camera ready. Their wedding date was set for October, 4 months away. And from that moment on, my family disappeared into wedding mode. Every phone call was about venues. Every dinner was about seating charts. My mom had a Pinterest board with hundreds of pins. So when I called my father from that hospital hallway and said, "I have cancer," he didn't hear a medical emergency. He heard an inconvenience. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Camille, listen," he said. "Your mother and we can't deal with this right now." I felt the words land like ice water. "What?" I whispered. "Your brother's wedding is coming up?" He continued, his tone firm now. "There's a lot going on. Deposits, planning, family commitments. This isn't good timing. Good timing. I need chemotherapy," I said. 6 months. "I'm scared. I need help." "You've always been strong," he replied. "Independent. You'll figure it out." Then just like that, I have to go. Derek and Megan are coming over to finalize the venue. The line went dead. I sat there for 45 minutes. Doctors walked past. Nurses pushed carts. Families laughed softly down the hall. And I stayed frozen on that bench, staring at my phone like it might start making sense if I looked hard enough. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. I was alone. That night, I started taking screenshots. I told myself it was practical. Chemo brain is real, memory gets fuzzy. But deep down, I think I already knew I'd need proof one day. The first day of chemotherapy, I drove myself. The infusion center was quiet in that strange, forced way hospitals have. Reclining chairs in a circle, IV poles, little TVs no one actually watched. Most people had someone with them. A husband holding a hand, a mother reading aloud, a daughter with homemade soup. I sat in chair 7. Alone. The nurse, Rita, smiled kindly as she hooked up the IV. "First time?" she asked. I nodded. "Most people bring someone," she said gently. I smiled back and lied. "They're busy." Later that day, curled up on my bathroom floor with nausea tearing through me, I texted my mother. "Starting chemo today. I'm scared." She replied 6 hours later, at the florist with Megan. "Picking centerpieces. Peonies or roses?" I stared at the screen until it blurred. Then I screenshot it. Chemo became my new reality. 6 months. 36 hospital visits. Poison dripping into my veins while my family debated napkin colors. I lost weight, I lost energy, I lost hair. One night, after round 4, I woke up shaking, vomiting, hair coming out in clumps. At 2:47 a.m. I called my mom, no answer. Again, voicemail. At 3:15 a.m., I texted my friend Harper. "I think I need help." She showed up 40 minutes later, still in scrubs, sat on my bathroom floor, and stayed until morning. No questions, no excuses. My mother called back at 10:23 a.m. "Oh sweetie, I saw your missed calls," she said. My phone was on silent. Megan and I were at the spa. Post-wedding stress, you know. "What did you need?" I looked at my bald reflection in the mirror. "Nothing," I said. "It's fine." And that's when something inside me shifted. Because I finally understood the truth. Some families don't abandon you loudly, they abandon you politely. And the wedding, it happened without me. I watched it through Facebook photos while recovering from chemo. Smiling faces, champagne dresses, my parents glowing with pride. The caption read, "The happiest day of our family's life." I saved that screenshot too. Not because I was bitter, but because somewhere deep down I knew this story wasn't over yet. People like to say, "At least you had insurance." As if that magically erases everything. Here's the truth: no one warns you about insurance doesn't save you. It just decides how much you're allowed to drown. 3 weeks after Derek's wedding, the one I wasn't allowed to attend because I might ruin the vibe, the bills started showing up. Not all at once. That would have been merciful. They came in waves, co-pays, deductibles, medications my plan labeled non-essential. which is a wild thing to call drugs that keep you alive. I sat at my kitchen table with envelopes spread out like a crime scene. 47,000. That was my out-of-pocket cost to survive. $47,000 I didn't have. I did everything you're supposed to do. Sold my car. Cancelled subscriptions. Lived on cheap groceries and stubborn hope. I cut my life down to the bone, and when that still wasn't enough, I did the one thing I swore I'd never do again. I asked my father for help. I typed the text slowly, rewriting it over and over like wording might change the outcome. Dad, I'm in trouble. The medical bills are more than I can manage. Could I borrow some money? I'll pay it back. My finger hovered over the send button for a full 20 minutes. Then I hit send. 2 hours passed. Then his reply came. Your mother and I just finished paying for Derek's wedding. We don't have extra right now. Have you looked into a personal loan? Your credit should be good. I read it 3 times. No, I'm sorry. No, I wish we could help. No, we love you. Just logistics. I screenshot it. Because at that moment, something in me finally snapped into focus. They hadn't misunderstood my illness. They hadn't been overwhelmed. They had chosen. I applied for a personal loan the next day. 14% interest. I'll be paying it off for years. But I'd be alive to do it. And apparently, that was my responsibility alone. Round 4 of chemo nearly killed me. My oncologist warned me it would get harder. Cumulative effects. She called it clinical words for a brutal reality. That night, my body revolted. I couldn't stop shaking. Couldn't stop vomiting. My hair, the hair my mother used to braid when I was little, came out in clumps on my pillow. I lay on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., teeth chattering, thinking, so this is how people die, quietly. Alone. I called my mom again, voicemail, again, voicemail. I didn't screenshot those calls. I didn't need to. I felt them. Harper came. Again, no hesitation. She held my head, cleaned me up, sat with me until sunrise. She didn't say I'm busy. She didn't say, bad timing. She just showed up. That's when I learned the difference between family and blood. The hospital offered a support group. I ignored it at first. I wasn't interested in inspirational posters or forced positivity. But Harper ran it, and she noticed something. You're always alone, she said one day, sitting beside my chemo chair. I'm fine. I didn't ask that, she replied. I asked why you're alone. And for the first time, I told the truth. My family is busy, I said, with my brother's wedding. She didn't react the way people usually do. No gasps, no pity. Just a slow nod. You know, she said, we keep visitor logs here. Every patient, every visit. I didn't understand why she told me that. Not then. But a few days later, I requested my first copy. 36 visits. 0 visitors. I kept that record too. By the time chemo ended, I wasn't just exhausted. I was changed. I'd learned how much I could endure, and how little my family would do to help me endure it. I stopped calling. Stopped explaining. Stopped hoping. And for 2 years, there was silence. Then one night, my phone rang, and it was my father. His voice wasn't strong anymore. It wasn't commanding. It was shaking. Camille, he said, I need you. And just like that, after 2 years of nothing, they were ready to be a family again. 2 years after the loneliest chapter of my life, I heard the words I wasn't sure I'd ever get to hear. No evidence of disease. Dr. Patterson smiled when she said it, like she'd learned to measure joy carefully in that room. I nodded, thanked her, walked out of the office, and then cried in the parking garage for an hour. Not happy tears, not sad tears, just release. 2 years of holding my breath, and finally, I could exhale. Life didn't magically become perfect, but it became mine again. I was promoted to art director. My boss had kept my position open during treatment, let me work remotely, never once made me feel like a liability. Talent is worth waiting for, he said. And for the first time, I believed him. I sold my Somerville apartment and moved into a small condo overlooking the Charles River. Nothing flashy. Just sunlight, space, and peace. My monstera plant came with me, still alive, somehow stubborn like me. Harper and I were closer than ever. Thursday dinners became sacred again, not because of tradition, but because consistency feels different when someone actually shows up. My family, bare minimum contact, birthday emojis, holiday texts, No conversations that mattered. I'd made peace with that. Or at least, a fragile truce. Then my phone rang on a Thursday evening while I was cooking dinner. Salmon sizzling, music low, life calm. The name on the screen stopped me cold. Dad. I stared at it, debating whether silence was the answer. Then I picked up. Camille, he said. His voice was thin, uncertain, a version of my father I'd never heard before. I need to see you. Not how are you? Not I'm sorry, I've been diagnosed, he continued. Parkinson's, early stage. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I need my family around me, he said finally. There's a dinner Sunday. I want you there. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen realizing something that hit me harder than the diagnosis itself. He never asked if I survived. He didn't know if I was alive. I spent the next 2 days researching Parkinson's. Because that's who I am now. Early stage, slow progression, long-term care, patience, sacrifice. It requires someone to put their life on hold. And suddenly, I understood exactly why he'd called. I wasn't the daughter he missed. I was the daughter who was available. I called Harper. They're going to ask you to come back, she said immediately. I know. Are you going? I need to hear it out loud, I replied. I need them to look me in the eye. Before I left, she said something that stuck with me. Bring the folder. I hadn't opened it in months. But that night, I did. Screenshots. Call logs. Hospital visitor records, 2 years of truth, neatly documented. Sunday came fast. I dressed carefully, not to impress, to armor myself. Black slacks, cream blouse, navy cashmere scarf. Healthy, successful, untouchable. My parents' house hadn't changed. White colonial, manicured lawn. The same place where love always came with conditions. Inside, the dining room was frozen in time. Family photos lined the wall. Derek's milestones everywhere. Mine stopped at 18. My father sat at the head of the table. Smaller, older. His hand trembled against the tablecloth. Fear sat in his eyes. After dinner, he stood, or tried to, gripping the table for support. I'll be direct, he said. I'll need long-term help. We've discussed it as a family. As a family. Without me. His gaze locked onto mine. Camille, you're the obvious choice. Obvious. You work remotely. You don't have a family of your own. Your room is ready. That's when I knew. This wasn't reconciliation. This was recruitment. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel pressure. I felt clarity. Because I'd already survived the worst thing that ever happened to me alone. And I was done being the default sacrifice. You're the daughter, my father said firmly. This is what daughters do. The words hung in the air like a verdict. I felt the old reflex rise in my chest. That instinct to complain, to smooth things over, to make myself smaller so everyone else could stay comfortable. But that version of me didn't survive cancer. I folded my hands calmly on the table. Before I answer, I said, I need to ask something. My father frowned. People didn't question him. They agreed with him. When was the last time you asked how I was doing? Silence. I mean, really asked. I continued, not about work. Not about logistics. About me. My mother's smile stiffened. Derek stared at his water glass like it might rescue him. Camille, that's not. My mother started. No, I said softly. I want an answer. My father cleared his throat. That's not relevant. It is to me. I leaned forward just slightly. Do you know if I'm still in remission? Another silence. Sharper this time. Do you know what my last scan showed? Do you know how many chemo sessions I had? Do you know how much it cost me to stay alive? My father's face tightened. You're exaggerating. That was the moment I knew exactly what I needed to do. I reached into my purse. Slow. Deliberate. My phone felt heavier than it should have. I'm not exaggerating, I said, unlocking the screen. I'm documenting. I placed the phone face up on the table. First, the hospital visitor log. 36 entries, visitor column none. None. I slid it closer. 36 chemo sessions, I said calmly. Not one visit, not one. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for the phone. She scrolled. Her breathing changed. I didn't know. She whispered. I told you. I replied, multiple times. I swiped, text messages, starting chemo today, I'm scared. At the florist with Megan. Roses or peonies? Swipe, Dad. I need help with medical bills. Have you looked into a personal loan? Swipe. Call logs, missed calls, voicemails unanswered at 2 a.m. Derek leaned forward now, color draining from his face. This is real? He asked quietly. Every screenshot is time-stamped, I said. Every document is official. My father stared at the phone like it was a foreign object. This is the past? He said finally. What matters now is the present. I nodded slowly. Exactly. I stood up. I was sick, I said. Not inconvenient. Not dramatic. Sick. I was fighting for my life while you were planning centerpieces. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me most. You didn't ask me how I was. You didn't come. You didn't help. And now that you need something, suddenly family matters. My mother was crying openly now. Camille, please. No, I said gently. This is the part where you listen. I turned to Derek. You say you can't help because you have responsibilities, I said. So did I. I had a job. I had debt. I had cancer. He didn't look up. Then I looked at my father. You're asking me to give up my life, I said. For someone who couldn't spare 2 minutes for mine. His hand shook harder now. I'm scared, he said quietly. I didn't handle it right, but I'm scared. For a split second, I felt it. That pull. The old ache. The little girl still hoping. Then I remembered the bathroom floor. The empty chairs. The unanswered calls. 2 years ago, I said. I called you crying. Do you remember what you said? He didn't answer. You said, we can't deal with this right now. I took a breath. So here's my answer. The room went completely still. I can't deal with this right now. 4 words. My mother gasped. Derek froze. My father stared at me like the ground had dropped away. I picked up my phone. I'm not being cruel, I said calmly. I'm being honest, and honesty is something this family hasn't handled well. I turned toward the door. Camille, wait, Derek said. I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't abandoning anyone. I was choosing myself. I didn't slam the door. That's the part people always imagine, the dramatic exit, the shouting, the final blow. But real endings rarely look like that. I walked out calmly. Past the family photos that stopped including me years ago. Past the chandelier that had watched generations pretend everything was fine. Past my mother standing frozen, hands clasped like prayer might undo what had already been said. Outside, the evening air hit my face, cool and sharp. It felt like oxygen. Behind me, I heard footsteps. My mother's voice cracked as she called my name. Camille, please. Don't do this. We're your family. I stopped at my car door and turned around. Family doesn't leave you alone when you're dying, I said quietly. And love doesn't show up only when it needs something. Her face collapsed. For a moment, I felt grief, not guilt, grief for the mother she could have been. Then I got in my car and drove away. I didn't cry. That surprised me most. I felt light, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't realize I was allowed to put down. A week later, my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered, not because I owed her anything, but because curiosity is a stubborn thing. Camille, she said, exhausted. I wanted you to know what's happening here. I listened. Derek had taken a leave of absence from work. My father's condition was progressing faster than expected. He needed daily assistance now, meals, medication, help getting dressed. They can't afford a full-time caregiver, she added. Your father refuses a nursing home. There was a pause. So Derek is doing it. Golden boy Derek. The son who'd never been asked to sacrifice anything. He missed an important project. My mother continued. His supervisor isn't happy. There's talk about his promotion. She didn't finish the sentence. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. And I meant it. Not because I felt responsible, but because reality is harsh when it finally arrives. Before hanging up, she said something that stuck with me. Megan says she understands now. My mother whispered. She says she's starting to see why you left. 3 weeks later, I got a text. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't dismissive. It was accountable. Camille, I owe you a real apology. I should have protected you when you were sick. I didn't. I see it now. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time. This was new. My mother had never taken responsibility without hiding behind circumstances. I didn't reply right away. 2 days later, I wrote back, "I appreciate you saying that. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I hear you." Her response came instantly. "That's okay. Whenever you're ready. Or never." Those 4 words hit differently than the ones I'd been given before. Then the letter arrived. Handwritten. Shaky. Uneven. From my father. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't ask me to help. He didn't ask me to forgive him. He admitted something I never thought I'd hear. "I chose your brother's happiness over your survival." I folded the letter and put it away. Not because it fixed anything, but because it told the truth. Life moved forward. I stayed cancer-free. I was promoted again. Creative director this time. I started dating someone kind, steady, unremarkable in the best way. Harper and I still had dinner every Thursday, and my family. They existed at a distance. Where they belonged. Because sometimes healing doesn't mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means space. 6 months passed, then a year, and somehow I didn't fall apart like everyone warned me I would. I thrived. Dr. Patterson used that word at my last checkup. Thriving. And I almost laughed because I'd spent so much of my life just trying to survive. Work changed first. I moved into a corner office with a view of the Boston skyline. Creative director. The title still felt strange in my mouth, like a code I wasn't sure I'd earned, but I had. I hired 2 junior designers. I mentored them the way I'd wished someone had mentored me. Honest, patient, present. Watching them grow felt unexpectedly healing. My monstera plant sat in the window, thriving in the light like it had something to prove. I dated carefully. No chaos, no convincing someone to care. Then I met James, high school history teacher. Kind eyes. Awful jokes. The kind of man who shows up when he says he will. No grand gestures, just consistency. He knew about the cancer, the family, the boundaries. He didn't try to fix anything, he just stayed. Harper was still my anchor. Thursday dinners never failed. We talked about work, relationships, the weird things life throws at you when you least expect it. She started dating too. A surgeon named Elena who laughed too loud and loved too hard. We were building something real. A chosen family. My mother texted sometimes, short messages, no pressure, thinking of you, hope you're well. I replied when I wanted to, not out of obligation, out of choice. My father's Parkinson's progressed. A part-time caregiver came in. Derek visited out of duty, not devotion. And maybe that's all he had to give. I didn't hate them. That surprised people. I just stopped chasing them. And here's what I learned in the quiet that followed. Some people will never love you the way you need. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you sacrifice. And that's not your failure. It's theirs. I used to believe family meant endurance. Loyalty at any cost. Silence when things hurt. Cancer taught me otherwise. Family is who shows up when it's inconvenient. Love is action, not intention. And boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. Those 4 words I said to my father weren't revenge. They were a mirror. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is reflect someone's behavior back to them without anger, without drama. Just truth. And truth changes things, not always for them, but always for you. I'm sitting in a coffee shop as I finish telling this story. Same place I come every Thursday afternoon. Good lats, big windows, the kind of background noise that makes you feel part of the world instead of separate from it. Harper will be here in an hour. Dinner after. Same rhythm, same peace. My phone is in my pocket. Inside it there's still a folder labeled family, screenshots, call logs, hospital visitor records. I don't open it much anymore, not because it stopped being true, but because I don't need to prove anything now. Outside the city moves. People rushing. Cars honking. Life happening, and for the first time in a long time, I'm not watching from the sidelines. I'm in it. If you've stayed with me this long, I want to talk to you. Not as a storyteller, but as someone who's been exactly where you might be right now. Maybe you're sitting in a hospital room. Maybe you're waiting for a call that never comes. Maybe the people who were supposed to love you made it clear you weren't their priority. And maybe, like me, you're wondering if it's your fault. Let me tell you what I learned the hard way. You could be dying, literally dying. And some people would still find something more important. That does not mean you weren't worth showing up for. It means they weren't capable of showing up. That distinction changed my life. You are allowed to stop begging for care. You are allowed to set boundaries without explaining them. You are allowed to choose peace over proximity. Forgiveness is not a performance. Healing is not linear. And family is not defined by blood. It's defined by presence. Those 4 words I said to my father, "I can't deal with this right now," weren't cruel. They were honest. They were the same words he once used to abandon me. Sometimes closure doesn't come from apologies. Sometimes it comes from realizing you survived without the people who swore you couldn't. I'm cancer-free now. I have a life I love. I have people who show up. And I don't feel guilty for walking away anymore. Because walking away saved me. If this story hit close to home, you're not alone. Drop a comment. Tell your story. Even if it's just 1 sentence. And if you want to hear more real stories about boundaries, healing, and rebuilding yourself from the ground up, hit subscribe. Take care of yourself. Really. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself.